Have you ever wondered why a massive continent like Australia ended up being colonized by just one European power, Great Britain? Especially when another country found it first. It's a fascinating story of missed opportunities, strategic gambles, and shifting global power. Let's dive into why Britain claimed Australia and why no one else really put up a fight. Way back in 1606, it wasn't the British who first laid European eyes on the great southern land. It was the Dutch. Navigator Willem Janszoon charted parts of the coast, and for the next century and a half, Dutch mariners mapped out the western, northern, and southern coastlines. They even named it New Holland. But here's the first big twist. They decided not to colonize it. The powerful Dutch East India Company, a corporate giant of its time, sent explorers like Abel Tasman. After his voyages in the 1640s, they assessed the land. Their conclusion: New Holland was a bad investment. From their perspective, the land seemed barren. There were no obvious precious metals or spices to exploit, and the indigenous population was sparse and nomadic, making them difficult to subjugate for labor, unlike in the lucrative Dutch East Indies, which is now Indonesia. So, for over 100 years, the Dutch knew about Australia, but left it alone. It was on their maps, but off their colonial agenda. Fast forward to the late 18th century, and a new player enters the scene: Captain James Cook of Great Britain. In 1770, during his first voyage to the Pacific, Cook meticulously mapped the fertile eastern coast of Australia, a region the Dutch had never charted. He saw lush landscapes, deep harbors, and what he perceived as vast potential. He claimed the entire coastline for the British Crown, naming it New South Wales. This was the moment the tide turned. Unlike the Dutch, the British saw opportunity where others saw desolation. But why were they so keen? It boils down to three main reasons. First, and perhaps the most famous reason, was the need for a new penal colony. After the American colonies declared independence in 1776, Britain lost its primary dumping ground for convicts. Its prisons, known as jails, were overflowing, and the prison hulks on the River Thames were a public health crisis. A remote, far-flung land like New South Wales seemed like the perfect out-of-sight, out-of-mind solution. The government decided to establish a settlement at Botany Bay, which Cook had praised. So, the first fleet, carrying over 1,000 people, most of them convicts, set sail in 1787 to establish a new society on the other side of the world. The second reason was pure geopolitical strategy. The late 18th century was a time of intense rivalry between European empires. Britain was constantly at odds with France, Spain, and its old rival, the Netherlands. A naval base in the South Pacific was a strategic dream. From Australia, the Royal Navy could protect its vital trade routes to Asia and, more importantly, launch attacks on the shipping and colonies of its enemies. It was a forward operating base that could project British power into a whole new hemisphere. Control of the seas was everything, and a port in Australia was a powerful chess piece on the global board. The third reason was a mix of arrogance and opportunism. The British believed colonization would be relatively easy. They knew the Dutch weren't interested. They also, tragically, vastly underestimated the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. They operated under the legal fiction of terra nullius, meaning land belonging to no one, ignoring the complex societies and deep connection to the land that had existed for over 60,000 years. This assumption meant they didn't anticipate significant, organized resistance, making the prospect of colonization seem less costly and more straightforward. So, Britain had its reasons. But that still leaves the big question. Why did the other major powers just let it happen? Why didn't France or the Netherlands try to stop them or claim a peace for themselves? Let's look at the Netherlands first. When Britain announced its plans, the Dutch didn't protest. Why? They had essentially already passed on the opportunity. Furthermore, by the 1780s, the Netherlands was in a period of decline. Their initial agreement, or lack of objection, was crucial. They were more focused on holding on to their incredibly profitable East Indies, which were right next door. Australia, in their eyes, was still the barren land Tasman had described, and protecting their spice trade was far more important than squabbling over a continent they had already rejected. Then there was France, Britain's greatest rival. The French were definitely interested. In fact, the French explorer La Pérouse arrived at Botany Bay just days after the British First Fleet in 1788. It was a close call, but the timing was terrible for France. Just a year later, the French Revolution erupted, plunging the country into a decade of internal turmoil, followed by the Napoleonic Wars. For the next 25 years, France's attention and resources were almost entirely consumed by revolutionary chaos and fighting wars across Europe. While Napoleon had grand ambitions, his focus was on dominating the European continent, not launching a massive naval expedition to contest a fledgling British colony on the other side of the planet. During this period of French distraction, Britain moved fast to solidify its claim. It wasn't just about the single settlement at Sydney Cove. They actively established new settlements to preempt any French attempts to gain a foothold. For example, settlements were established in Tasmania in 1803 and Western Australia in 1826, partly out of fear that the French might try to colonize those areas. By the time the Napoleonic Wars ended in 1815, Britain's presence in Australia was well established and growing, making any challenge much more difficult. After Napoleon's defeat, the global power balance had shifted dramatically. Britain emerged with undisputed naval supremacy. Its navy ruled the waves, a doctrine that would become known as Pax Britannica. No other European nation could realistically challenge British control of the seas or its distant colonies. What about the other old colonial powers? Spain and Portugal. Their empires were in decline. By the early 19th century, they were losing their colonies in the Americas to independence movements and simply lacked the naval power and resources to project force into the South Pacific. Their golden age was over, and they were in no position to compete with the rising British Empire. Later on, in the late 19th century, a new potential rival emerged. Germany. Germany's unification and rapid industrialization led to its own colonial ambitions. Their expansion into the Pacific, claiming parts of New Guinea and other islands near Australia, actually spurred the separate British colonies within Australia to unite. The fear of a powerful German presence so close to home was one of the driving forces behind the federation of the Australian colonies into a single nation in 1901. So, in the end, Britain's colonization of Australia was the result of a perfect storm. It was a combination of the Dutch passing on the opportunity, Britain's pressing need for a penal colony, its strategic foresight, and a crucial window of time when its main rivals were distracted or in decline. It wasn't a grand, contested prize fought over by empires. It was a strategic claim made at just the right moment in history, a moment that shaped the continent's destiny. Thanks for watching. If you found this historical journey interesting, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the stories that shaped our world. See you next time.